Welcome to the Heaven Speaks blogcast, a space where boldness is birthed and passion is reignited. Here, you'll be stirred to speak, move, and live with heaven's courage. Let's begin. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Heaven Speaks blogcast. I am Chelena, and today we are focusing on holy boldness through union, when God flows through you as a gateway. Let's dive into this one. There is a kind of boldness that many people spend years trying to develop. It often looks like confidence, sounds like certainty, and feels like something you have to grow into through effort, experience, or repeated attempts to get it right. But the boldness that comes from God does not originate that way. What we often call boldness is actually effort. It is the attempt to speak clearly, act confidently, or step out without fear, all while managing an internal pressure to perform well. Beneath that effort, there is often a quiet tension. Questions like, am I saying this right? Am I doing enough? Am I even being effective? Even when it appears strong on the outside, that kind of boldness still keeps you at the center. But true, holy boldness begins when the source shifts. In Acts 4:13, it says,
Now when they saw the boldness of Peter and John, they marveled, and they realized that they had been with Jesus.
Their boldness was not explained by personality, education, or natural confidence. It was not something they had trained themselves into. It was the visible evidence of something deeper. They had been with Him. That is where real boldness is formed. Holy boldness is not the result of becoming more confident in yourself. It is the result of becoming more aware of Him within you. As that awareness deepens, something begins to change in how you show up. You are no longer striving to produce the right words or trying to measure whether you are doing enough. Instead, you begin to yield. And in that yielding, boldness emerges, not as performance, but as overflow. It is not loud for the sake of being heard, nor forceful for the sake of being seen. It carries a quiet authority that does not need to prove itself, because it is not originating from your own effort. It is being expressed from a deeper source altogether.
Union changes the source of your expression.
When you begin to understand union with Christ, it changes more than how you think. It changes where you live from. Most of us have been taught, even subtly, to live as the source of our own expression. We think, I need to say the right thing. I need to respond the right way. I need to represent God well. And while the intention may be sincere, the posture still places responsibility on us to produce something that was never meant to originate from us in the first place. Union shifts that completely. Jesus said in John 5:19,
Most assuredly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he sees the Father do. For whatever he does, the Son also does in like manner.
Even Jesus did not function as an independent source. He lived in complete dependence, expressing what he received from the Father. This is the pattern. When you are living from union, you are no longer striving to originate. You are learning to respond. Your words, your actions, and your decisions begin to take shape through communion rather than effort. You are not trying to generate something spiritual. You are yielding to what is already moving within you through the Holy Spirit. This is where boldness begins to take on a completely different nature. Instead of asking, do I have what it takes to say this or do this? The question becomes, what is God saying? What is He doing? And when you sense that movement, your role is not to perfect it. It is to agree with it. That agreement is what allows expression to move freely. Union removes the pressure to perform because you are no longer initiating what is being expressed. You become a vessel, a participant, a living connection point between what is happening in heaven and what is being released on the earth. And in that place, something shifts deeply within you. You are no longer trying to be bold. You are simply no longer resisting the one who is.
You were never meant to perform. You were meant to carry.
One of the quiet burdens many believers carry is the pressure to represent God well. It may not always be spoken out loud, but it shows up in subtle ways, in the need to say the right thing, respond correctly, pray effectively, or present ourselves in a way that reflects Him without flaw. Over time, that pressure can begin to shape how we relate to God, turning what was meant to be relationship into responsibility. Without realizing it, we shift into performance. We begin doing things for God rather than allowing Him to move through us. We measure our effectiveness by outcomes, by responses, by whether something worked. And even when our intentions are sincere, there can be an underlying strain, a quiet sense that everything depends on us getting it right. But that is not the invitation of union. Jesus never operated from performance. He did not strive to prove Himself, nor did He carry the weight of trying to produce results independently. He lived from a place of abiding, and everything He did came from that connection. In John 15:5, He says,
I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, bears much fruit. For without me, you can do nothing.
This is the pattern He invites us into. Fruit is not something we are meant to force into existence through effort or discipline alone. It is the natural outcome of abiding. When a branch remains connected to the vine, life moves through it, and fruit appears in its proper time. Not because the branch is striving, but because it is receiving. In the same way, you were not created to generate spiritual outcomes through effort. You were created to carry His presence, to live from a place where His life within you becomes the source of what is expressed through you. As you remain connected to Him, what is unseen begins to take form outwardly, not through pressure, but through grace. This is what it means to move from performing to carrying. It is a shift that quiets the internal pressure to always get it right. It releases the constant self-evaluation that can follow your words and actions. It allows you to stop measuring your effectiveness and instead remain anchored in relationship, trusting that what needs to be expressed will come as you stay connected. Because in the end, the weight was never yours to carry. You were never meant to produce something for God. You were meant to carry Him.
When God flows through you as a gateway.
There is a point in your journey with God where something begins to shift from internal awareness to outward expression. Up to this point, much of your focus may have been on growing, learning, healing, and becoming more aligned with Him. But as union deepens, expression begins to change. What was once intentional starts to become natural. What once required effort begins to emerge with ease. You begin to realize that you're not just walking with God, you are carrying Him into spaces. This is where the idea of being a gateway begins to take shape. A gateway is not the origin of what passes through it. It is the point of access, the place where what exists in one realm becomes visible and tangible in another. And in the same way, when you are living in union with Christ, your life becomes a point of access for His presence, His voice, and His nature to be expressed in the earth, not occasionally, but as a way of being. There is a beautiful picture of this in Scripture. Psalm 24:7 says,
Lift up your heads, O you gates, and be lifted up, you everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in.
This is not just poetic language. It is a revelation of access. Gates and doors do not generate what passes through them. They open so that something greater can enter. And in the same way, when your life is yielded to God, you become that place of access, a living doorway through which the King of Glory is revealed. This is not something you strive to become. It is something you awaken to. As you yield more fully to Him, you begin to notice that your words carry weight beyond your intention. Your presence begins to shift atmospheres without effort. Your obedience, even in small moments, becomes an opening for something greater to move through you. This is heaven touching earth through a yielded life. Jesus modeled this perfectly. Everything He did came from the Father. He did not move independently or speak from His own initiative. In John 14:10, He says,
"The Father who dwells in me does the works."
that is the essence of a gateway. Not self-generated action, but divine expression moving through a willing vessel. And this changes how you see yourself. You're no longer trying to be impactful. You're no longer measuring whether what you are doing is enough. The focus shifts from outcome to alignment, from performance to presence. Your responsibility becomes simple. Remain yielded, remain aware, remain connected. From that place, God is expressed. Sometimes it looks like speaking when you would normally stay silent. Sometimes it looks like peace in an environment that carries tension. Sometimes it looks like clarity where there was confusion, or love where there was resistance. It may not always feel dramatic, but it carries something unmistakable because it's not coming from you. See, when you live this way, boldness no longer feels like something you have to summon. It becomes the natural result of not holding back what God is releasing through you. You are not forcing expression. You are allowing access.
Boldness without union becomes striving.
Not all boldness is born from the same place. From the outside, it can be difficult to tell the difference. Someone may appear confident, articulate, and even spiritually expressive, yet internally be operating from effort rather than connection. When boldness is pursued apart from union, it may resemble the real thing, but it carries a completely different weight. Instead of emerging naturally, it becomes something that has to be maintained. There can be an unspoken pressure to keep up with the same level of clarity, authority, or intensity, even when it's not being led by the Spirit in that moment. Over time, that pressure begins to create strain. What often felt powerful starts to feel exhausting, not because the calling has changed, but because the posture has shifted. This is where striving quietly takes root. Striving often presents itself as discipline, passion, or commitment, but beneath it, there is tension. It sounds like an internal urgency to get it right, to stay consistent, to not miss the moment. Even in spiritual spaces, that posture can slowly pull you out of rest and back into performance, where the focus shifts from connection to outcome. And over time, it becomes unsustainable. Anything that is not grounded in union eventually has to be carried by effort. When that happens, boldness is no longer free. It becomes something to protect, something to prove, or something to reproduce. It can lean to burnout, insecurity, or comparison because the weight of it rests on how well you perform rather than how deeply you remain connected. But this is not how God designed it. Holy boldness was never meant to be sustained by you. It was meant to arise from a life that remains rooted in Him. This is why moments of heaviness are not a signal to try harder, but an invitation to return, to step back into abiding, to release the pressure to perform and reconnect with the one who is the source of everything you are expressing. As you return to Him, the strain begins to lift. What once felt forced begins to soften, and what was carried through effort begins to move again with grace.
You don't have to force what God is already releasing.
At the end of it all, this is what remains. You do not have to force what God is already releasing through you. So much of the tension we feel around boldness comes from the belief that something depends on us initiating it, sustaining it, or getting it exactly right. But as you begin to understand union, that pressure starts to dissolve. You realize that what God desires to express through your life is not something you have to bring into existence on your own. It is something you are invited to respond to. This changes how you move. Instead of trying to create impact, you begin to pay attention. Instead of striving to be bold, you become aware of what is already rising with you by the Spirit. And in those moments, your role becomes simple: to stay attentive and respond. There is a rest in that. It does not mean you'll never feel hesitation or uncertainty, but those feelings no longer have the final say. They are no longer signals to hold back. Instead, they become opportunities to lean deeper into trust, knowing that the boldness you need is not something you have to produce. It is already present through your union with Him. 2 Corinthians 3:5 reminds us,
Not that we are sufficient of ourselves to think of anything as being from ourselves, but our sufficiency is from God.
Your sufficiency has already been settled. So when God begins to move through you, whether through a word, an action, a moment of obedience, or a quiet expression of His nature, you do not have to overthink it or perfect it before you respond. You simply remain connected and allow what is taking shape to be expressed. Because at that point, it is no longer about you getting it right. It's about Him being revealed. And when that becomes your focus, boldness is no longer something you reach for. It becomes the natural result of a life that is no longer holding back the one who lives within. I have a declaration for you. I am not the source. I am the vessel through which God flows. I yield my voice, my presence, and my life as a gateway for His expression. I release the pressure to perform and rest in union with Christ within me. His boldness flows through me with clarity, peace, and authority. I do not force what God is releasing. I allow Him to move through me freely. Heaven is still speaking. May courage rise and kingdom passion burn bright in you. Find more at heavenspeaks.co. Until next time, live bold in His love.